Hi guys, so we're going to keep going with the Couples Communication Toolbox episode 6, and in this portion we are continuing to connect the dots. Now I'm going to look back at the same theorist. This is the Couples Survival Workbook, and this is kind of a fun little foundation piece for us to start to evaluate what does the structure of our conflict actually look like. So there is a beginning, a middle, and an end to our conflict. And in these stages, so the beginning of the conflict, there's some questions that we really want to consider. Notice the theme of how our conflicts tend to start off. So how does the conflict usually begin? What are the sort of nuances or the places, maybe the time of day, the envelope, so to speak, around the conflict? Or hot topics. Do we usually have more conflict about parenting or about finances? Do we usually have more conflict on Sunday morning or on Monday morning? And who usually initiates the conflict? Now, this is something interesting, and it can feel a little blamey, but it's important too to notice who's the person who is more willing to stand up and say, hey, let's talk about this. And that is also a key to really starting to unpack what does the beginning of our conflict look like. And then how is the conflict initiated? What is the manner? And this is more of what's uncomfortable about how the conflict starts. What do we see in the first person, the first one to start speaking? What are some of their behaviors, their micro cues, their tone of voice? You know, is there an accusation? Is there some criticism, some contemptuousness? Does it appear more stony and judgmental? But really, how is it starting off? And personally, how do you feel in the beginning of the conflict? And then also, what might the other person be feeling at the onset of the conflict? So whether you're the person who advocates to start the topic or you're the person who is approached, all of this is really valuable and meaningful for us to start to get a better foundational picture of what's happening. And then the middle of the conflict. So how is the beginning, or how is the first initiation responded to by the second person? So is this person responding with anger, with tears, with bitterness, with fierce submission, contemptuousness, stonewalling, withdrawing, maybe pursuing or escalating things more, some of those other systems that we started to speak about last time? And does this response provide fuel to increase the conflict? How does this response maybe escalate things, or how does it try to put a lid on things? Either way, that could increase some uncomfortable feelings for the initial person. And again, we want to be aware at this stage, how does the responder feel, and how does the original person who brought up the subject feel? What are the emotions that are showing up in each? And then the end of the conflict. So the end of the conflict, how does your conflict stop? So is there angry statements? Is there like the last word is put in there? Someone leaves. There's a commitment, this vow, we will never fight like that again. Maybe it fizzles out. Or maybe you actually can get to a place where you de-escalate in your conflicts and you can find some resolution. Now that is the goal that we're trying to work towards, because we're going to fight for the rest of our lives in our relationships, in our love relationships. So ultimately, we're trying to figure out how to find repair. And who initiates the reconciliation? Who's the person, who's the peacekeeper who's going to try and get the closure? Now, this isn't necessarily a person who's going to pursue an ending. So we have the middle, and then we have the beginning start all over again, because the first person goes back in and stirs up more heat. This is actually a person who's trying to find a way to create some containment. They might not do it right, but they're trying. And how does reconciliation get initiated? Who is the key initiator? Now, I just said the person who begins the conflict might come back in and restart it. However, the beginner might also be the closer. That can happen. It's not that unbelievable. And then if nobody does this, if neither one is willing to seek that closure and ending, why? What is it that's getting in the way of both of us that we're unable to do this? So, I mean, conflict is super important in relationships. Conflict is a way that we are trying to express a yearning for our unmet needs, our wants, and we're just so desperate and we're feeling uncertain inside, so we don't actually reach out in a way that's actually conducive. However, without rupture, we cannot experience repair, and repair is more vital to relationship than rupture. That comes from the circle of security philosophy of attachment and adult attachment and bonding. The repair in our adult love relationships and our key adult relationships is just as important for corrective experiences inside of us. So how have you used conflict as a positive tool to transform your relationships? That's a great question. And how can you remind yourself of those times when you have been successful to use the conflict, you've learned from the mistake, and you've had some transformative, corrective experience for yourself and hopefully in that relationship? Right, you guys, there's a little bit more of the communication toolbox, and then we're going to move on to something else. Bye for now.